and welcome to a new episode of Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10, India's longest running TV show dedicated to the growth of MSME, SME, startups and entrepreneurs. On the show tonight, I'll be in conversation with Sai Srinivas, co-founder and CEO at Mobile Premier League. Now, MPL joined the Unicorn Club late last year, and Sai is going to talk to us about what it takes to build a business from scratch. In the second segment, I'll also be in conversation with Sanjay Sharma, Managing Director, iFinance. Take a look. Thank you, Sai, for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me.
So, Sai, MPL isn't your first venture. You earlier spearheaded Creo, which was acquired by Hike, and you also co-founded an entertainment company called Base9 back in 2009. And now, of course, MPL. So tell me, did you always aspire to be an entrepreneur?
I think I started aspiring to be an entrepreneur when I was in college. This was in IIT Kanpur from 2006 to 2010. I think before that, I never really knew what entrepreneurship meant. I think it was there where, we had the opportunity and the exposure of meeting so many different people, of seeing so many different professions. And the thing about entrepreneurship that actually stood out was it seemed like the only profession which allowed for ultimate freedom. That is freedom to pick and choose what you want to do, freedom to build what you want to build. And it somehow just resonated a lot, with me. And I think in my second year of my engineering is when I kind of decided that, hey, you know what, this is what I want to do. And I want to, pursue a career where I have the freedom to pick and choose what I want to build and, the kind of products I want to build.
So correct me if I'm wrong, but MPL initially started with casual and puzzle games. And in 2019, you added fantasy sports. That's when you really saw an exponential growth. Tell us what convinced you that this move will get you the mobile success that you're seeing right now.
Right. I think actually, to be honest, right from the get-go, MPL pretty much kind of grew quite rapidly. I remember us getting to about 1 million odd daily active users by the end of December, I think in about 4 months, right? And I think back then, and I still think even now, I think that's quite a remarkable speed. Even none of us anticipated that it would grow so rapidly. I think the reason why we added fantasy at that time was that we saw that as a great opportunity. We saw that as an opportunity where, if you're Amazon.com or if you're Flipkart, fashion automatically happens to be one of the categories that you'd have on your e-commerce platform, right? And we saw that getting into IPL that year, it was a bit of a no-brainer to not have fantasy. I mean, it was a no-brainer. Let me put it this way: to have fantasy, and that's the reason why we added fantasy. And what that meant also was that, a customer or a player who's looking for variety would always find, something that they can choose and play on MPL, right? It's like you go into a shopping mall. The reason why you go to a shopping mall is, you can buy a pair of socks, you can have a burger, you can watch a movie, you can do, multiple different things at the same place. And that was the thought process behind it.
Sai, what would you say about the overall fantasy sports industry in India today? Would you consider it mainstream?
I think fantasy sports is mainstream because fantasy sports has been around for a good, 12, 13 years, right? I think so. Fantasy sports is quite mainstream. I would definitely say that. Esports, I think, is barely scratching the surface, right? I think it's something that's just come about over the last, 3 or 4 years. And the reason for that also is that it's only in the last 3 or 4 years that people have had access to good mobile devices with great internet, maybe the last 5-6 years, with great internet and with good hardware, right? So which means that you can now play games that are of good quality and more in-depth games. So esports is just something that's just starting out.
And if we have to pinpoint and understand, what do you think is driving users to the platform? Is it just cricket that's the crowd pleaser?
At the end of the day, some people might like cricket, some people might like football, some people might like some other game, etc., so on and so forth, right? But I think one thing's for sure is that almost everybody enjoys some game or the other. right? And the fact that MPL has a wide variety of games available on its platform means that there's something for everyone. And that's pretty much the reason why we've been able to consistently grow. I mean, there's never been a situation, touchwood, in the last 4 years where MPL's not grown meaningfully year on year. And I think a large part of that is thanks to a growing active mobile internet user base in India. But at the same time, it's also to the fact that there's a wide variety of games that people can choose from on the MPL platform.
Sai, tell us what, according to you, are some of the misconceptions or challenges in this industry faced by businesses today, and what do you think needs to be done to overcome them?
Right. I think the one of the biggest challenges that the industry faces is this entire debate of game of skill versus game of chance. I think if competing in a cricket tournament is considered fair and legitimate, like I said, back when we were kids, we all used to participate in cricket tournaments, or for that matter, any other sport, then playing a digital game of chess or carom or pool or any game that fundamentally requires a lot of skill, a lot of capability, and a lot of practice should also be viewed in the same way. And it's viewed in the same way in most parts of the world. And honestly, as per the law, it's also viewed the same way in India.
While hundreds of new businesses are launched each year, most of them fail and only a small fraction go on to become unicorns. What has been the journey like for you to become a unicorn?
Right. I think you, like you said yourself, right? Many people start a business, but only very few eventually go on to be successful. I think a lot of it boils down to disciplined effort and also a certain amount of luck, which comes in the form of right place, right time. What I mean by that is, I think people see that MPL is a unicorn, but people don't see that before this there were 2 or 3 companies that didn't work, right? And it takes a lot of effort to get any business to run and run meaningfully. Sometimes a lot of the success is just because you're at the right place at the right time, and you got to be grateful for that. And at least we at MPL are very grateful for the fact that we're born in this time, you're born in this specific decade where India is experiencing this crazy growth. We have the right infrastructure around us, be it internet, be it payments, be it proliferation of mobile devices. And if it weren't for all this, I mean, no matter how much I try, no matter how much anyone would do anything, I don't think we'd be successful. So I think those are the in my opinion, those are the key ingredients. Yeah.
And while taking cues from your own journey, what would your advice be for startups and entrepreneurs? How do you raise capital? How do you approach investors and scale your business?
I think the most important thing for any entrepreneur is to primarily build a business listening to the customers and not listening to investors. It's very, very important. I think a lot of people don't get it, right? A lot of people think that if I do this, I'm going to go raise around at a higher valuation. And then, this investor is going to come put some money, that investor is going to come put some money. But, the only set of people who always tell you the truth and who are always by your side are actually your customers. I think the second thing also that people need to realize is that India is a market where you should build a business where you're looking to take 10 rupees from 100 million people rather than 10,000 rupees from, say, maybe 10,000 people or 100,000 people. And India truly is a market that's proven that, right? If you take FMCG and if you take any other industry, right, most of the revenues actually comes from sachets. Most of the revenue comes from the fact that they're selling these 1 rupee, 5 rupees, 6 rupees packets, or even for Coke, or for that matter, anything else that we consume, right? And you have to design your business in a way where that is possible. Else it becomes very hard to recognize and realize revenue in India. The last thing which I definitely say is persistence. I think you have to persist. You have to ensure that you're continuously pushing in the same direction and being persistent about your business or your product. Sometimes people tend to do something for a year and then recognize that, oops, it's not working, and then they kind of let go of it. But nothing good comes in a year or two. It takes meaningful amount of time to build anything even remotely valuable to the customers, or for that matter to the broader markets.
Great. It was lovely chatting with you, Sai. Thank you.
Likewise. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
It's time now for a quick break. We'll be back shortly. Stay tuned. Welcome back. You're watching Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10, and right now I'll be speaking to Sanjay Sharma, Managing Director of iFinance, about how the company is making financing easy for MSMEs. Listen in. Thank you, Sanjay, for being on the show today. So, Sanjay, I want to begin this interview by asking you, how has 2022 shaped up for you? So far, has this year been better than the previous 2 years in terms of growth and loan demand?
First of all, good evening. And I think the last year started off with a big shock. After the first wave of COVID, we were almost breathing a sigh of relief when the year started. Financial year 22 started with the first quarter of COVID's second phase of epidemic, and it set back the first half of the year just in trying to manage that impact. There were huge lockdowns in the country. Customers were not able to operate their businesses. There was the need for restructuring of distress cases. So the first half of the year started off on a negative note, but the second half of the financial year 22 has been a phenomenal turnaround story, you could say. We started seeing businesses beginning to operate. In the last half year, we started to disburse more than 100 crores every month for many months of new business loans. So I think the second half year was good. We saw our portfolio starting to grow rapidly as it used to before. So yes, 22 was a mixed year. Started with a big negative, but then it turned out to be a good positive year for growth.
So, financial inclusion is one of the most critical drivers of economic progress. How do you think fintechs and NBFCs can improve access to financial products for the underbanked population in order to bridge the rural-urban digital literacy and gender divide?
That's an excellent question, because even in the micro enterprise space, there are 67 million micro enterprises which do not get any formal finance from banks or from existing NBFCs. And this big problem can easily be solved using technology, fintech related processes. And I think that's where the new NBFCs and the fintechs have a very large role to play. And we keep talking of becoming a $5 trillion economy, $10 trillion economy. That milestone would be quite ineffective if we do not move this 67 million micro enterprises up the scale. So I think bringing that social equality is one big agenda, and I think that's where NBFCs and fintechs have a role to play.
And would you consider 2022 as the year of revival for MSMEs? Has this sector truly bounced back post the pandemic?
Ritwika, I feel that the 2022, I would characterize it as a year of resilience that was demonstrated by the small scale and the micro enterprises. Having been through a black swan event like the COVID disruption, it's amazing that most of these businesses survived. So I think I would call 22 as a year of resilience, and I believe that the coming year, FY23, is the year of revival, tremendous growth, and some very good tidings in terms of profitability.
Sanjay, I also want to talk about the digitization of the lending process. Tell us how technology has played a part in making this process easier, perhaps better organized, and even simpler.
I think the technology, the first thing it does is it allows you to look at data points which are not the typical data points that a traditional bank or a NBFC would look at. So in our case, our customers do not have great bank statements. They don't have balance sheets, books of accounts. So we have to rely on a lot of alternate data, and technology allows us to do that. So that's the first big use of technology, that it makes access possible for us to give loans to these customers. But then you're very right that besides that access, it allows you efficiency in your process. We follow a process where we have a completely paperless process. Our customers do not give us any paper. The entire decision making happens without paper, and even the disbursement happens directly into their bank accounts. It's all technology that makes that happen. It makes the process efficient, And that's one of the reasons why we can give a loan of 1 lakh to a micro enterprise and still make money on it. Otherwise, these small ticket items would be very difficult to break even on.
So I read that you are in the process of setting up 100 new physical branches. In the current digital era, what is the rationale behind this move and how will this benefit your business?
It does look counterintuitive that, here's a company that is paperless, talks of digital process, and yet wants to have more branches. I think the reason for this is that our customer needs a face-to-face interaction. Our customer is an unorganized business owner, and he or she is unable to directly input all the information that is needed on a loan application. So they do need a loan officer standing face-to-face with them and helping put in the application detail through a phone or an iPad. So that's the primary reason for a branch, and once the application is filled in, the entire process is digital. We then from there on almost behave like how fintechs behave. We have a very, very small team in the head office, and it's only the branch team that helps the hand-holding with the customer. So in a way you could say that we have followed a method which is phygital, which is we want to be high-tech in terms of process, but we still want to be a high-touch when it comes to customers. So it's all because of customer requirements that we have followed that model.
Looking ahead, what are your main priorities for iFinance for the coming months and the year ahead?
In the year ahead, iFinance is beginning to see tremendous growth in business. As I mentioned that last year itself, we started disbursing more than 100 crores, and which we continue to do even now. So we feel that this is a year to scale up, rapidly grow, and to show very good profitable numbers. So for us, it's a wonderful year. Which business would not like to grow rapidly and show rapid growth in profits? This is going to be the year, and I think we've given 400,000 loans to date. Hopefully this year we will give another 200,000 loans, and that will be quite some growth for us.
And finally, tell us, how can NBFCs like iFinance play a crucial role in India's success story to really boost the economy in the right direction?
That's a great question there. And I did touch upon that I believe that India is on its way to becoming a $5 trillion, $10 trillion economy, and I'm sure that we'll be in the top 2 or 3 countries in the world. The question that bothers me is that at that point, would we still have underprivileged or near poverty level class? And if we have to solve for that, we have to make sure that the lifting wave lifts all the boats. We have to make sure that it's not that the growth in the economy comes from the big players and the big companies, but it also comes from the micro and small enterprises. And I think this is one place where NBFCs have a huge role to play. They have always been the entities that look at the less privileged, less serviced, underserviced and unserviced customer base. So NBFCs have a role to play in lifting this segment up. And not just NBFCs, I'm sure the banks will also contribute, and they do contribute, and so will the fintechs in moving this segment up. So I think this is an important role that I can see smaller NBFCs, the medium NBFCs and fintechs playing.
Well, it was great chatting with you, Sanjay. Thank you.
Thank you, Ritwika. Thank you for having me on the show.
And before we wrap up, here's a quick look at our CXO diary.
Zero ego, basically have no ego.
My success mantra is to aim high and to work hard.
The best leaders are the ones who essentially who've given away all responsibility and have all the free time in the world.
Leadership to me means that being able to give a direction to your team, show them how to get to the destination, get to high achievement.
Skin in the Game by Talib.
The last book I read was it's a slightly esoteric book by Jai B.P. Sinha. It's about Indian culture and Indian corporate culture, Shraddha or the respect. And that's been the Indian tradition, and he has used that to explain, how in the culture in Indian companies mimics that.
laziness at times?
I can be too assertive at times.
The quest to build a world-class, product company from India.
What keeps me motivated is the fact that the work that I do creates a social impact.
Actually, Jeff Bezos.
I admire Mahatma Gandhi, and I think there's so many reasons to admire him.
I think it'll be Twitter.
I rarely go to a social media platform, so I'll just give it a pass.
I'm usually either playing or sleeping.
When I'm not working, I am with my family trying to create positive quality time and memories with them.
And that's all we could pack on this edition of Leaders of Tomorrow Season 10. I'm Ritwika Gupta signing off. Hope you enjoyed the conversations. Thank you and good night.